Hi, Amy Shaw here. It's August 19th, 2016, and I have the house to myself today, so I get to actually come into my library. The only one here is me and the dogs, so I might get a little visitor in here. I have one dog in particular that's pretty curious about anything out of the ordinary, so he might come greet us at some point. But anyway, yes, here I am in my library, and the reason I want to make this particular video today is that yesterday I was having some dialogue with somebody about the Mandela effect. And really the message that I have been trying to share, and I'm going to continue to share about the Mandela effect, is that it's not really here to harm us. It's not here to deceive us. It's actually here to wake us up. My next video, which is going to be pretty intense. I've been working on it for over a week now because there's a lot of stuff I have to cover and I want to be able to do it in a very articulate way. I'm going to be talking about the Antichrist and what that really is, who the Antichrist is, and how that pertains to the Mandela effect and everything that we're experiencing now. But before I get to that, which hopefully I'll get to later today, I really wanted to make this video because in dialoguing with somebody about the Mandela effect, I was sharing something that I already know, I've known for a while, and that is about the nature of reality and how reality is created. And I was thinking about something I shared in another video about how there was a time in human history when, for instance, the colors red and blue literally did not exist because people did not have the ability to discern the colors. So we really actually sort of created colors into our reality. And, we know this by historical texts and, even current cultures that exist now on our planet who cannot discern the color red from the color blue. And so it brings up a really interesting discussion. People don't really like, we live in this very rational, materialistic culture, and people don't really respect or like when you just kind of speak opinion off the cuff. They like to have videos they can watch or articles they can read that sort of proves what you're saying or your position. So as I was saying, in dialogue that we, the nature of reality and we don't even know colors, I thought, okay, I'm going to go find a video about this. I actually learned about it, as I shared before, through a DVD that I got from the Great Courses. The whole entire lecture series was about color. So that's how I actually learned about that. Which really kind of expanded my understanding of reality. But I went to go find a video that sort of explained this in a more succinct and perhaps scientific way than I can. And I stumbled across this video, which I watched, and I shared the link to it. As I was watching, I just was like a popcorn of epiphanies was going off in my head. About all kinds of things. So what I want to do is I copied the video. I'm going to cut it up and comment after each section. So I'm going to share with you the actual original video and then cut it and comment and then share and then comment. So yeah, hang in there, okay?
Hey, Vsauce, Michael here. This appears blue. This appears yellow, and this appears green. Those of us with normal color vision can probably agree. But that doesn't change the fact that color is an illusion. Color as we know it does not exist in the outside world, beyond us, like gravity or protons do. Instead, color is created inside our heads. Our brains convert a certain range of the electromagnetic spectrum into color. I can measure the wavelength of radiation, but I can't measure or observe the experience of a color inside your mind. So how do I know that when you and me look at a strawberry and in my brain this perception occurs, which I call red, that in your brain a perception like this doesn't occur, which you have of course also learned to call red. We both call it red, we communicate effectively and walk away, never knowing just how different each of our internal experiences really were.
So I love this example of using colors because it's just a very clean and succinct way of talking about what I've been talking about for so long now, and that is that reality truly does occur in the head. What we're out picturing, what we see, we're collectively agreeing on to label it, to put a language around it so that we can talk about it and relate to one another in a very common way. But that doesn't mean that what you're seeing and what I'm seeing is the same thing, because reality and what we see is it happens here within our own mind. So that's the big takeaway from this. But hang on, there's more.
Of course, we already know that not everybody sees color in exactly the same way. One example would be color blindness. But we can diagnose and discuss these differences because people with the conditions fail to see things that most of us can. Conceivably, though, there could be ways of seeing that we use that cause colors to look differently in different people's minds without altering their performances on any tests we could come up with. Of course, if that were the case, wouldn't some people think other colors looked better than others, or that some colors were more complementary of others? Well, yeah, but doesn't that already happen? This matters because it shows how fundamentally, in terms of our perceptions, we are all alone in our minds.
Okay, this is really interesting, and I'm going to be talking about this actually in the next video that I'm doing about the Mandela effect and the Antichrist, because basically what he's saying is that we are all alone in our minds. But it wasn't always this way, and we're rapidly coming up on a time when it's no longer going to be this way. So keep hanging on, because this gets really, really exciting for me. Hang on.
For now, it remains the case that we have no way of knowing if my red is the same as your red.
Okay, so the basic premise here is fundamentally that we do not have a way to communicate. And I don't believe that this is true. So just keep watching. Hang on.
Maybe one day our language will allow us to share and find out. Or maybe it never will. I know it's frustrating to not have an answer, but the mere fact that you guys can ask me about my internal experiences, and the mere fact that I can ask my friends and we can all collectively wonder at the concept of qualia is quite incredible, and also quite human. Animals can do all sorts of clever things that we do. They can use tools, problem solve, communicate, cooperate, exhibit curiosity, plan for the future. And although we can't know for sure, many animals certainly act as if they feel emotions: loneliness, fear, joy. Apes have even been taught to use language to talk to us humans. It's a sort of sign language that they've used to do everything from answer questions to express emotion or even produce novel thoughts. Unlike any other animal, these apes are able to understand language and form responses at about the level of a 2.5-year-old human child. But there's something that no signing ape has ever done. No ape has ever asked a question. Joseph Jordania's Who Asked the First Question is a great read on this topic, and it's available for free online. For as long as we have been able to use sign language to communicate with apes, they have never wondered out loud about anything that we might know that they don't. Of course, this does not mean that apes and plenty of other animals aren't curious. They obviously are. But what it suggests is that they lack a theory of mind, an understanding that other people have separate minds, that they have knowledge, access to information that you might not have.
Okay, once again, now we know about theory of mind. But the basic premise here is that the reason that we cannot communicate with animals, or that animals cannot ask us questions, is because they don't have a theory of mind. Now, pay attention to the fact that he says that animals operate at about the level of a 2.5-year-old human. This is really interesting. Keep watching, but I just want to add that there are people that exist who can communicate with animals, and that will tell you animals do, to some degree, ask questions. So we can call them animal whisperers, dog whisperers, horse whisperers. We can call them, animal psychics, whatever you want to call them. But there are people who claim to be able to speak with animals, and there are people who also exhibit some degree of communicating with animals, in that you can see a definite change or rehabilitation in the animal's behavior based on a very unique and unseen relationship between the human and the animal.
Even us humans aren't born with a theory of mind, and there's a famous experiment to test when a human child first develops a theory of mind. It is called the Sally-Ann test. During the test, researchers tell children a story about Sally and Ann. Sally and Ann have a box and a basket in their room. They also happen to have a delicious cookie. Now, Sally takes the cookie and puts it inside the box, and then Sally leaves the room. While Sally is gone, Ann comes over to the box, takes the cookie out, and puts the cookie inside the basket. Now, when Sally comes back, the researchers ask the children, where will Sally look for the cookie? Obviously, Sally will look in the box. That's where she left it. She has no way of knowing what Ann did while she was gone. But until the age of about 4, children will insist that Sally will check the basket, because after all, that's where the cookie is. The child saw Ann move the cookie, so why wouldn't Sally also know? Young children fail to realize that Sally's mental representation of the situation, her access to information, can be different than their own.
Okay, now here's the most important part, the theory of mind. He states that we are not born with the theory of mind, and we don't actually see it fully developed until about 4 years of age. I don't know why the epiphany of this did not hit me so much sooner, because I have a degree in psychology. I'm familiar with the theory of mind. I'm familiar with the Sally-Ann test. Okay, so let me divert for a second. I have a 21-year-old son who has been diagnosed autism spectrum disorder. I know what they say about that, all the different things that they say about that, the features of that, and what that means. But I live with a human being that has this disorder, so I understand intimately in interaction with him exactly how this works. And I know that they're wrong on many, many, many levels about how they define and label and disorder and categorize what autism is truly about. One of the things that I know, well, let me back up a second. My son's been through psychological testing as part of the process of getting an official diagnosis. And in that testing, of course, they say that this is something that he is significantly lacking in, and it's a major problem for most of the people, all of the people, I would say, who have been diagnosed with autism. At some level, especially when you start to get, lower down in the levels, if you want to put it on a high-low continuum, the theory of mind begins to dissipate more and more and more and more. So, of course, this is one of the things that they said about my son, that he has, deficits in theory of mind. Well, in other words, they're trying to say there is a retardation, not intellectually, but in developmental process of the brain. But yet, at the same time, they're saying here that we are not born with the theory of mind. Well, if you look at the Sally-Ann test, and this is the part that I was just like, wow, this is a huge epiphany for me, although it's not, but in a sense, I already knew this, but I just didn't connect it with the theory of mind. If you look at the theory of mind test, it's so obvious to me that how the communication occurs with children is completely psychically. We are born psychic. In other words, we are born without a theory of mind, as are animals born psychic without a theory of mind. I know for a fact that my 21-year-old son, who has autism, communicates and always has communicated psychically. Okay, what happens in the frustration process is that as they're communicating psychically to people that are not receptive, who are not communicating back psychically in a conscious way, but are projecting out unconsciously, it creates an autism condition that's extremely frustrating and causes them to want to go within themselves and almost even shut down, okay? Now, usually human beings, that psychic connection, they are able to say to themselves, well, gee, I'm communicating to my mommy and my daddy psychically, and they are not responding to me in that way. They're responding to me verbally, and they're teaching me words. And I'm learning that as I speak the words, that they respond. So what's happening then in that process? The psychic communication slowly gets shut down as children learn that they don't get their needs met through that form of communication, and that they have to learn a verbal communication, and that is the only way that they will be heard or that their communication will be responded to. Makes sense? So, but connecting it to theory of mind was what the epiphany is for me, because I always knew that well, I shouldn't say I always knew. I've known for a very, very long time that my son is psychic and that that's how he communicates. But I just didn't connect that to that being related to his deficit of theory of mind. So, wow, that's to me mind blowing and such a revelation, and it only just confirms what I already know. In a much more scientific way of the process of how, I mean, if you think about it, by 4 years old, a child in our culture is so enculturated that it just makes perfect sense to me. The problem is that in our culture, we elevate theory of mind as being a superior thing, as being the thing that we want all people to have. Because to be less that is to be stunted or retarded or unable to communicate or less than, right? Makes you stop and really wonder who is less than. So the thing of it is I know that we live in this society, this culture where everybody wants proof, 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 proof. You know, I don't know. I mean, I guess I could sit there and set up some sort of scientific way to provide proof of what I'm saying. But I really don't have the energy to do that, nor do I have any interest to do that. I know from direct experience of living with my son for 21 years, going on 22 years, that the way that he communicates is through telepathic communication. And I know that he's not alone in this. You know, I can't say every person with autism does this because I don't know every person with autism. But, you know, I'm very involved in the autistic community in the sense, you know, of being with other parents, being in many different programs, putting my son in different programs, social groups and whatnot with other peers that also have autism. And I was a social worker in my previous life. You know, I had a caseload of nearly 100 people with developmental disabilities, and a good percentage of them had autism. So I was in their homes and I was interacting with them, and based on my experience of what I know and my knowledge, I can say that the majority of people with autism, this is how they communicate. And a lot of parents, I know it's hard to hear that, and they're living in frustration, and you know, these behaviors are happening, they don't understand it, and it can seem like, because our culture sort of lays this on, that it's a developmental disability, that it's a delay, that it's, you know, a disorder, that it's a non-preferred way of being. And so because they're responding to their child like this, and their child truly is psychic, they never did develop that theory of mind fully, and so they're perceiving and picking up on everything that that parent is unconsciously even projecting out there. If you're living in an environment where you're constantly being looked at as if something's wrong with you, you're unwanted, you're a burden, you're, you know, I mean, well, how is it going to, it's like a self-perpetuating thing. Of course you're going to bang your head and start having these responses in life that, why am I even here? You know, self-injury, frustration, you know, acting out, melting down. You know, a lot of that has to do with just the psychic overload and the inability to actually communicate with anybody in this world in a meaningful way. And so if you think of autism in that perspective, it makes absolutely perfect sense to me. And so I think that sometimes parents just aren't quite aware yet that their child is not defunct, is not, you know, disabled, but they're actually evolved to the next level up. And our society, we just haven't caught up with them yet. We haven't caught up. And as we slowly wake up and realize, oh, I know for myself, my own experience, that, you know, my son incarnated for a reason, and that we are going through this life together for a reason, a very profound and important reason. And we are both helping each other in amazing ways that I could just spend an hour in a video telling you about. But I don't really feel the need to do that, honestly, at this point. I really don't. And I feel time is getting short. So I just want to keep spreading the message that this is where we're heading, and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's an exciting thing.
And apes who know sign language but never ask us questions are doing the same thing. They're failing to recognize that other individuals have similar cognitive abilities and can be used as sources of information. So, we are all alone with our perceptions. We are alone in our own minds. We can both agree that chocolate tastes good, but I cannot climb into your consciousness and experience what chocolate tastes like to you. I can never know if my red looks the same as your red, but I can ask. So stay human, stay curious, and let the entire world know that you are.
Okay, so here we go again with this notion that we are all alone, that we basically exist as individual entities within these bodies in this rational material world. And no wonder people are suicidal and depressed and feel existential pain and feel the loneliness and feel the isolation. No wonder. But the exciting news is, and this really relates to the Mandela effect, I can't wait to actually share with you guys what I need to share with you about this. But the good news really of this is that we are evolving, and we are right on the cusp, just right on the cusp of leveling up big time in our human consciousness and opening ourselves up psychically and being able to communicate with each other in a different way, and to know that we truly are not alone. We have never been alone. We have always been one. But it's this illusion that's been held together and perpetuated in a large degree by rational materialism that is crumbling away, and it's very exciting. It's very exciting, and I am overjoyed and full of so much love for you guys. I'm excited. So I hope that you guys feel it too. So hang in there. Know it's getting better. It might get hard for a time as everything starts crumbling around us, and a lot of fear and, just a lot of shaking up of everything that we've known to be reality. But don't be fearful. Know that where we're getting on the other side is amazing, and everybody is just going to be literally in heaven. So keep watching. I have more stuff to say. I love you guys so much. Have a great day.